Oh my gosh, guys, welcome back. Episode 24 of the Light Warriors Unleashed podcast. And today with you, I have an amazing special guest. She's a brand new friend for me in the energy field. Her name is Prue. She is from Australia and she has this beautiful, beautiful energy about her. And we dive into this podcast talking about being unshakable in the purity of your light, what that looks like, how you're tested in being unshakable, how it shows up in your pathway in the world and the work that you do. And we lean into different dynamics of her world that she's transitioned through and really stepped in to own, this pathway, coming from an environment that was conditioning to women to be a certain way in the world and how she broke free from that and how she steps in to help serve other women in that space right now as well. And just in general, her beautiful, beautiful soul and energy. Like I was so grateful that I got connected to her through another friend and how it all just aligned for us to come together and how our value systems align, how we see life moves through us. And guys, I just can't wait to share this episode with you. And I hope that you feel into her heart center and you take from it what you desire to move through and embody yourself. Because, guys, we are and have access to living an unshakable life every single day. But just like she says at the end of the podcast, we need to choose it. And every day we get a choice. And I've been saying this for a long time, but I really want you to feel it from her today because she is going to give you stories that required her to make a choice to step into this. And it changed the game for her life. And I cannot wait for you to feel and hear this in episode 24, Light Warriors Unleashed podcast with the amazing, beautiful Prue. Oh man, guys. Okay. Prue and I were talking before we jumped onto this and the back end and talking about just some like posh regimented ways that we could say her name because I fuck up names all the time and I'm like, okay, can you say it again? Because I just want to make sure I get it right. So welcome, Prue.
Thank you. Otherwise known as Prue.
Yeah. You can already tell where we're gonna lead this, you
Yeah,
know?
any Aussies listening to this will know Kath and Kim and Prue and Trude, the fancy versions of Kath and Kim in the store. So yeah, I get a lot of that. It's funny.
It is so funny. And like I love unique names, but I literally like this is one thing that I'll own. I have challenges sometimes remembering how to pronounce their names. Like I had a client whose name was spelled Jhamack and it was pronounced
Wow.
Jamac. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
it was just
Mm-hmm.
and it took me forever to like get that, like forever, forever, forever. So welcome,
Yes.
Prue, to the podcast. I'm so excited
Thank
you're
you.
here.
Yeah, I'm excited too. And I just need to share my father's side is Italian.
Mm.
And so my great grandmother was full Italian. And when I was the second child born, I was another girl. And my sister, my older sister is called Katrina. So, Catalina, very, very Italian.
Yeah.
And then I come along and it's Prue. And my dad takes me or tells his grandmother, this is Prue. And she looks at him and said, "Where did you get that name? Out of the
Yeah.
garbage can?"
You poor woman, you.
You know,
Oh my god.
like, yeah, okay. So I'm
This,
living with it now.
yeah, seriously. And this is going to lead into like actually a really fabulous conversation because of the work you do in the world. And I really want to hone in on this because I love, love, love. And for all of you guys that have been listening, this is like the 24th episode when this comes out into the world. So like I've been around a few blocks apparently over 24 episodes, but like I love the dynamic of talking about soul mission. I love the dynamic of talking about how we get into that. And
Mhm.
you are really leaning into this brand and this movement within the collective energy about being unshakable. And with a name like Prue, I'm sure you've been tested, just like the story from the grandmother. I was like, oh, this is perfect
Mhm.
lead in. Yes. About how to hold the power within your name, within what you're here to do. And I know that you've got a ton of stories you're going to tell us today, which I can't wait to lean into. But let's talk first about like be unshakable. Like, what does that actually mean? And how is this energy moving through the world for you right now? Like, what are you seeing and all that stuff?
Mm. Yeah. Okay, great. So yeah, being unshakable, it was just a term that I know it's out there in the world, but I didn't know it was out there in the world.
Mm-hmm.
It's really weird. When I started it, I was like, oh, this is actually describing how I feel when I've been through lots of challenges. It's the having the capacity to hold the negative emotion and not change who I was. Because when we have challenges, and, you know, we'll talk more about my belief systems that were running in the background for me, and it's so easy just to be the chameleon or the iguana, possibly.
Yeah, there's a lot of geckos on the windows right now.
To change colors, to fit in, to, you know, please others, to step into that role. And what I taught myself, and I was really teaching myself too, like I was doing programs that weren't allowing, like I wasn't actually having face-to-face contact with people. It was just me doing the work by myself in my own home. And what it was creating was this ability to feel the emotion and just be able to allow it rather than resist it. I mean, yeah, resist it, allow it rather than resist it. And so it creates less conflict in your life when you are capable of doing this, because what I know and what I help a lot of women do is get out of their heads, you know, and really like step into the feeling of it, and so they can process the emotion and the feeling, and nothing on the outside needs to change. It's just here that needs to change. And for me, so it's like the being unshakable is that the ability to hold anything that comes up in your life and to still show up as yourself no matter what. That's my mission. And I actually really love it, because I feel I started out really jumping into helping women with goals and like setting goals and doing all that sort of stuff. Very similar to you, maybe.
Yes, I totally get that one.
Yeah. And so, and that was great, but everyone just like kept hitting a wall. It's like, what is this wall that everyone keeps hitting? And it's like, oh yeah, you can do all the action, but if it's not aligned and you're not processing what was underneath that or was stopping you before, then how on earth you're ever going to break that glass ceiling that you've set for yourself? So my idea is, yes, great, have all the goals, have all the dreams, first become unshakable, so that, you know, when someone says, I don't like you, it doesn't just shut you down.
Yeah.
You know, because people are saying stuff and things are out in the world that are just totally outside of our control, and they just stop us in our tracks.
Yeah.
You know, it's got nothing to do with us, yet it stops us, because it's touching on a belief that we have about ourselves. So it's like, cool, let's uncover that, become unshakable first, and then power forward into your aligned goals.
Yeah. And I love this conversation because, you know, I speak to this all the time. Like, if I trigger you, amazing. Because if I'm triggering you, right, that is showing you where inside you need to work on, so you can hold your capacity, so you can hold who you really are and your truth. But most of us fear being triggered, or we fear somebody rattling the cage that is going to move our belief system into our actual purity. Because what if most of the life we've been living is actually not our life? Then we actually have to step into that. And I know this is some of the work and conversation you and I have been having over the last few days together. So it's been really neat to see that. But I'd love to just hear your opinion on, like, when this unshakable energy, or even the triggering energy, how that is used as a tool as we move through this. Like, I just, whatever you're feeling on your heart to share. So
yeah, I absolutely, like, I feel this because, you know, I'm triggered still. Like, I'm still, you know,
I get triggered all the
we're
time.
just humans. We're just like humans, like going into the world. Yeah, it's not stopping me as much as it used to anymore. But like, I will share the one thing that triggers me still, that I still work on, is the idea that people, it's like I'm being wrong, you know, that's not the right way to do things, or if I believe that I'm creating a feeling in someone else. So if you're a people pleaser, you understand this. You want everyone to feel, you know, nice all the time. And, you know, me being I've got a really strong value of kindness. And sometimes that gets in the bloody way, because I'm like, God's sake, like, Prue, you can't always be kind to others, but not kind to yourself. So the trigger, you know, is if someone possibly could say to me, well, that's not very nice, you shouldn't do that thing, or shouldn't say that way, or you should consider others or something, I'd be like, you know, it used to stop me in my tracks. I never used to do anything. I used to just hold it, and like, it really grew resentment. And distrust with myself as well. And so now what I do is I actually, I don't want to say compartmentalize it, but I do, because it's sort of, I break it down, and like, you feel the feeling first. Like, you're like, oh God, that hurts me when someone says that to me. Like, I'm like, oh, I'm hurt. And I can feel the feeling. And then instead, what I do is always like step it back and think to myself, what was I thinking that actually created that feeling? Because I really want to be responsible for my own feelings. Like, nobody else creates my feelings. I create them 100%. So I was like, what did I think? Yeah. And that what a belief was it attached to that made me have the feeling? Because, you know, the person that said that, then they go on their merry way and they're like, fine. And I'm over here like having a nervous breakdown around it.
Yeah,
like,
of course.
doing all the things.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, how did I create that feeling in me? And it's like, do I want to continue thinking that way and believing those things? So I was like, okay, one thought at a time, one thought trigger, and then moving through it, and just then coming to like, I'm always telling people to reframe and redirect their mind. Like, they'll have something that just comes in automatically because they've thought it so often. And then if we're in awareness of it, we can see it. Like, I'm a very visual person, and also very kinesthetic though. Yeah. But I see it as a sentence. It's like a written sentence. That's how I see it these days. I've just practiced it so much. It's like, it feels like it just comes through and just like passes over my eyes. Yeah. And so I can see it. I'm like, oh, no wonder I feel shitty right now, because I'm, you know, thinking this particular thought that creates this feeling in me. Yeah. And so then I just redirect my brain. Like, and this is the conscious brain that I'm talking about, because, you know, there's the unconscious and the conscious, but I really love to work in the conscious mind first, because that feels logical for people. I'm like, yes, it's like this logical place. You can think this way. And then the deep work comes after that. It's like, actually, you've got toembody it. You can't just say it, which is why mantras and stuff don't particularly work if they don't land here.
Oh my God. And I so agree with you about that. And like, I even give the context of, you know, 5 years ago when we used to go into healing, we'd have to do all this work, right? And we'd have to go in, and then we'd be speaking affirmations in the mirror, and we'd be doing, and it would take us a long time. But now in the process of the evolution of energy on the earth, things are happening quickly. Whereas if we don't live and breathe the mantra, like I'm working within some limiting beliefs inside myself, obviously. And like, I have it on my phone. That's why I pulled my phone up. It says, money is a simple relationship in my life. Because I used to have drama around it. I used to avoid it. I used to have all the things, right? So like, for me, that's a mantra that when I feel it, I bring it into my body. I'm like, ooh, I believe this. Like, I believe that money is a simple relationship in my life. And every time I open my phone, it hits me and it hits me and it hits me. So like, I'm in that awareness going, is this truth? Like, when I spend money, when I circulate money, does it feel juicy now? Is this simple? You know? So really paying attention. And I love that you brought that forth. But there's a lot of people in the world right now that are so scattered that they don't have time to compartmentalize this in their world. And I know that you probably have some of them as clients, or you've seen them throughout the way. Like, what would you say to them about this scenario in the world to start to pay attention? Because we know if we're not paying attention, things are sliding through. We're in autopilot. We're creating the same patterns, which most of us want to bust, but we're not paying attention. So like, what would you say to these people that are like, I don't have time to think about my thoughts all the time?
Yeah, it's so interesting. So the first part is, what's it actually costing you to not do this work?
Yeah.
And, you know, and the cost is, you know, conflict within yourself, conflict, you know, in your relationships that go bad and south. You know, you people pleasing, you putting all those masks on and being somebody that you're not, and therefore, you know, possibly you, when you're on your deathbed, you know, to say you're a, you know, 90-year-old person, you're on your deathbed looking back on your life going, oh, I wish I did X, Y, and Z. That's what it's costing you. Yeah. And to the other part where, you know, you don't have time, like literally what I just said and explained to you, how I, you know, do that little process, it's nanoseconds.
Yeah. Yeah.
It doesn't take any time. It's
Yeah.
like, that's just a lie that you're telling yourself, that it takes
Thank
time.
you.
It's
Yeah.
like, bullshit. No, it
Yes.
does not take any time. It's, you know, yeah, you get so good at it, and that it just happens in seconds. Like, you feel a feeling, you see the sentence, you know, for me, and I redirect, and it's like nanoseconds. And it's like, otherwise I'd be stopping and starting all the time, you know. But it's not like it's you get to the point where it's like you flow through life so much simply than you were in the past, because everything before, you're like, oh, hit the wall, hit the wall, hit the wall. It's like that, those walls don't come thick and fast like they used to. They, you know, they start to become smaller to start with, and then they start to disappear.
Yeah, you know,
yeah, exactly. Like, oh, that's right, I can just step over this thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, rather than it's like, oh, it's a huge effort, you know, got to get your grid on and move over it. No, you don't. It's seconds. And it is a process. Like, you know, when you're learning something new, of course you have to commit to something and learn something new. You do not learn to play the piano in one lesson.
Yeah.
You know, and then you forever have to keep learning it. Like, it's not just, okay, I'm going to spend 12 months learning the piano and then I'm going to know every song, I'm going to be able to read every piece of music and play it. It's like, no, you have to keep practicing it and using the skill to play the piano. And that's the same thing, but it does get easier. Like, it's not like, holy shit, where's middle C?
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
Well, and we can also reference this to like the intuitive pathway of like even the work that I do. Like, when I say to people, they're like, how do you just live by your intuition all day long? I'm like, well, it started off by small things, you know, and listening and taking action and listening and taking action. And then it got easier. And then I did it halfway through the day. And now I do it all day long because it is life, because that's who I am now, because I've chosen to do that through the actions I take. So it's the exact same thing of monitoring our thoughts and the way that you're speaking it out. And it would even be considered that it's the same thing, you know, like meaning that it's our intuition talking to us to move through this thought process, because it's not serving our collective of energy and our advancement, and it's not in our light. So it would almost, if we took the logical brain and the spiritual side, almost be considered the same thing.
Absolutely. It is the same thing.
Yes, I know.
You know, we are whole, and whatever language we use to explain the process, or, you know, stepping into that, it's just different language for different people, which is why it's so important for us to have this conversation, because it melds it together. And then everyone's like, oh, it's the same. Yes, it is. It's the same. Yeah.
And like, it lands for people differently, right? It lands for people differently. So it's like my message and my energy is different for some people, and your message and your energy is different for other people. And it's amazing, but we're speaking the same game, you know? And it's like, pull it from wherever you can feel aligned to it, and lean into that and feel it and allow it to move through your body, to own that piece and to own that movement within you. So I know you've been on a journey lately. So I'd love to hear about this journey. So just so you guys are aware, Prue and I met 5 days ago, technically, when we're recording this. Got introduced from a friend who I didn't even really know. And I love how the domino effect starts to happen. So she's in her spiritual journey, but newly in awareness, we'll say. And newly for anybody could be any period of time. But for her, it feels still new. Correct? I mean to say that?
Absolutely.
So I'd love for you to touch on, what does this feel like in your field? We know that you teach being unshakable, and you've got a bunch of training, and you're leading women through this space. And at the same time that you're holding this mechanism, you're also going through your own transition, which is not shocking at all, because we do that, you know, like, but like, what does this feel like for you? Where are you at in the process? I just love to be able to hear whatever you feel like speaking to, because I think this is important. So
I'm definitely in the process of slowing down, which is big for me. And for the last 20 years, like, I'm 45, so, you know, 46 this year. So for the last 20 years, I've been a parent. You know, I've got 3 children. Before that, you know, as most people were. They were working, prior to having children and doing all the things, partying, traveling. Me, it was traveling and partying, definitely, trying to figure out who I was. And then just went into parenthood and being a wife. Like, I was married once and had a child, and then divorced and married again, and I've got 2 children, and just was like slipped into society's expectation of me. It's like, this is Prue. Like, literally, I didn't actually know I had a choice.
Yeah,
like,
seriously.
It sounds so naive. Like, I'm like, God, of course I freaking have a choice. But I didn't know I had a choice. I just thought that I was meant to grow up, like do some sort of work. Work was never like a high priority for me for some reason.
Yep.
Not for some reason. I know exactly why, because of my upbringing, because of the whole belief systems around women and men and society. And
Let me own this. Actually,
yeah.
I knew why.
Yes, I knew why. Why.
Yeah.
In my town of Broken Hill, we're a mining town, and up until I want to say the 80s, every woman that got married, because it was very unionized, every woman that got married had to stop working.
Wow.
No one was allowed to work.
Yeah.
So you can understand then why I was born in the 70s, understand why I had this belief system of, women are just designed to, have babies and be married and keep house.
Yeah.
And even though there were women around me that were doing the opposite of that, I just thought they were unicorns, I suppose. It's like, it's not really the norm,
Yeah.
Yeah. And so for the last 20 years, I just went into that role and have tapped into my own little space and created beautiful businesses that I loved. But always never was like, this is a business that it's like a real business. It was always like a hobby. It's like, this is just a hobby and it's just Prue satisfying her need, to feel fulfilled or something, like the small wife. Like, seriously, like, I didn't have an apron on, but I might as well have.
Oh, those aprons.
Yeah, so many aprons. And don't get me wrong, like, I've had this real, since stepping into this space of like, oh, I get to choose. Like, it started maybe, I want to say maybe 2019, I reckon. And I just started thinking to myself, I think there's more. I think there's more to this. Like, what I felt was really fucking frustrated, actually. That's how I felt.
Yeah.
I was like, my favorite word was irritated. I was irritated at absolutely everything. Someone could put down a pen wrong and I'd be like, for fuck's sake, you're so irritating. Like, it was just like, wasn't even present, like relevant to what was going on in my life, but I was just like in here, I felt like screaming. But because I was so quiet and nice and kind, and Prue's always lovely, I couldn't scream because I would look like I had a bad life, and I didn't, so I had this like internal conflict, like back and forth all the time. I remember actually one day losing my shit with a simple task of moving a desk.
I love it.
Just small moments.
Yeah.
And I asked my husband, can you help me move this desk? It was really heavy and big, and it scraped the side of the wall as we're moving it out. And I just fucking lost my shit. Like, I absolutely lost it. Like, I'm sure Joel's thinking, what the hell is wrong with Prue? Like, I have no idea. And I just lost it. And I remember, like, doing the whole dramatic thing, like sliding down the wall, like, oh my God, And it was from that moment, after, like, I had some space and time to think about it. It's like, oh, like, this is on me. Like, no one else gets to not fix it, but that's what I was thinking at the time. Fix this. It's like, this is a Prue problem, not a life problem, not a circumstance problem. It's not the kids. It's not the wife, the husband. It's not the home, the job, or the lack of career or whatever. It's like, it's an internal problem. And so then I just opened myself up to receive things. And so I started watching YouTube, of all things.
Yeah, of course. Everyone goes to YouTube. Yeah, I know.
I knew. And so, YouTube, and then just started watching a few things, and I was like, oh, that makes sense. And, then I started listening to a podcast, And I still listen to that podcast to this day. It was like a lady that runs a life coach school in the States. And she was like, you get to choose. And I was like, hold on, wait, what? Really?
Stop
like,
the train.
Is this really true? I have no idea. And yeah, then I was like, then I just had this huge aha moment. And as soon as I had that aha moment, I was like, I felt like I'd stopped holding my breath. Like, and it was this like exhale. And it's like, okay, cool. Now I know this. Yeah, I can actually choose the shit that I do want in my life and stop choosing the stuff that I don't want and focusing on that. And so I just went on that nice journey and I quit my job.
A nice
my
journey.
job.
I love it. You say nice journey. I know.
Yeah, I know. It's so funny. Yeah, but I did it. Like I had my businesses still, but I was always working a job. Like I had a job that I worked in finance. So I'd been at a place for almost 10 years. And I got to the end of that year because it was like maybe wrapping up 2018, 19 that year.
Yeah.
And I was like, I can't do this anymore because, you know, the energy, it wasn't aligned to me anymore. I was like, no, I just can't. So I remember saying to Joel, do you mind if I just quit? Like, I don't have another job to go to. Yeah. But he's like, yeah, sure. He's so supportive, which is fantastic. Like, thank God. Yeah.
After
you
what I saw with the desk, like I think, well, whatever you want, baby. You know?
yeah, whatever. And so I quit my job, and then within like a couple of weeks, I had actually got a new job, and that was the perfect job for me. And it was only for 18 months. It was like this transition role, and it was a job that stepped me into a space that made me feel really uncomfortable because me being a person that my underlying belief was men are better than women. You know, no wonder I was doing all this stuff and feeling the way I was because I knew that was not true. That was not the truth. Yeah, that was what was playing over my head. So the job that I stepped into had a lot of men with accolades and letters behind their name and all the intimidating factors that I would normally run away from. I just lent into it and was like, yeah, I'm just going to do this, and lent in. And then it was in that role because it was a not-for-profit organization, and I was like their executive officer, and sitting around the board table. So you can imagine a big intimidating board table with all the people coming in, lawyers, judges, CEOs and of all the mining companies and the big high up people, you know, and even women, like there's women in there that more masculine energied women, you know, which all know so intimidated by. I sat in that room and I was like shaking like a leaf, sweating profusely because that's what I do, you know, when I was in my nervousness. And after a few times of being in that room, I just had this like thing drop in, and it's like, Prue, you are just as worthy as these people like that are sitting around the table. You are equal. Yeah. They're not better than you. They're not anything more than you. You are all equal. And I felt that role was the perfect role for me to fully step into that power of mine and just know in my knowing that I was just as worthy. And so from then, everything just sort of came to me. Like it was literally becoming a life coach. I had never heard of the term really ever. Yeah. And if I had heard of it, I was like, that's a bit cringy. Like, how embarrassing.
What is this?
Feeling?
You know?
Yeah.
For real?
Affirmations and shit. Like, that's really embarrassing. Even though I was like, you know, I did love my crystals and I did love like, you know, going to psychic readings and all that sort of stuff. I was like a closet spiritual person.
Yeah, it's for fun. Remember? Like it's for fun.
Yeah, to have a bit of a laugh about it, you know? Yeah. And so once I opened that doorway was open, it just came to me. And I remember being in that role as the executive officer, I got a phone call from some other foundation and they asked me a question. I couldn't even answer the question. Yet she intrigued me, the person on the other end of on the line, that it made me put down the phone and look up their foundation on the internet. And I went scrolling through their board members, and one of their board members was a life coach. Yeah. And I was like, and she was also something else, like some mainstream, you know, professional as well as a life coach. I was like, hold on, wait, what's this? Like, She's also got like a doctorate in this, but she's also a life coach. Is there something in this? And it just then it just becoming like information just
Of course.
came to me, like I was
Yeah.
receiving all this information, and then I was like, I'm going to do this, and I quit that job and I became a life coach. I've been doing it ever since.
And here we
So
are.
cool. Here we are. Yeah, cringy and all. Yeah,
it's so funny. Like, well, and sometimes it forces us to, like, when we make a dramatic decision, it forces us into an alignment, where some of us, and I've made dramatic decisions throughout my way, but didn't have safety nets in my dramatic decisions. So, like, there was one time I literally got stuck in Vegas that I didn't have enough money to come home. And I had to call my mom, and I was like, Mom, I need you to fly me back home because I'm stuck in Vegas. She's like, what the fuck are you doing with your life? Like, I'm like, look, I got an intuitive hit. I was told to come to Vegas. Somebody needed a message. So, like, like, and like literally that's really what happened. And she's like, I think that you're nuts. And I'm like, I am, but can you just buy me a ticket to come home? Like, like,
yes, exactly. Let's talk about this later. Just buy the ticket.
Yeah, I have crazy stories like this. Remember, like I said to you, so like Prue and I just interviewed on her podcast. So we're coming off of that interview. So like I'm still in the stories of what I told over there, in that space of time. But it's like, that's the thing. And sometimes we need to make a bold move and commitment to make a change or to step into a vibration, right? When we talk about being unshakable, it is bold some days, and we've got to own, even if we are a nice woman that has a big heart, it doesn't mean that we don't need to take an initiative and hold an energy, right? And being unshakable doesn't always mean that you are crass and bold and a rebellion like me. It means that you just hold your power in this unity within you.
Yes. And that's exactly the message that I want, because there are plenty of people out there like me that want to be kind and open-hearted and gentle. And I've literally got over here that my values are service, poise, and tenacity, because I don't want to be the person that's like badass, yelling at people. It's like, that's never going to be me. That's not going to be me ever. And you don't have to be that person. Like, I know plenty of people like that, and I love them, but that's not me. And I want people like me to know that they can still step into this space of choice and choosing their life that they want, that's aligned to them, and still be kind and still be the nurturer, because I still want to be the mother. Like, I'm loving it, like currently right now in my life, like my children are older, but I'm loving like getting up every day to make them lunch and baking sourdough bread and, doing all this sort of stuff, like, and I'm holding that space. But because before, when I was in that irritation and frustration, I was fucking hating every minute of that. I was like, it's getting in the way. Why am I, all the negative energy? It's like, oh, that's right. I can be both. I can do both. I can hold energy like this in both ways, in both capacity, and even in my work. So that's what I really want to like help people with, knowing that they don't have to change who they are to be unshakable. Being unshakable is not badass. It's just being who you are in any circumstance. That's what it's all about.
And I love this. And I also, along with my rebellion, am gentle and nurturing and loving at the same time. but I step into, I have a bold energy. And my job, though, in my mission and light in the world, is to hold that. Whereas every single one of us has a piece. And I love that you brought that forward, because sometimes we think we have to become something else. A lot of success mechanisms taught us back in the day that you need to do X in order to be successful, when the energy now moving through the world is be 100% yourself and remember who the fuck you are and step into that space in your purity of light. And that is the puzzle piece. It's not trying to conform to be someone else. It's holding yourself in this amazing purity here, right? And I love that you brought that forward.
That's it. Like, sometimes I find that really hard to articulate. And it's like, and I know even on Friday when you're like, okay, tell me about you, I'm like, oh, I'm not really sure. I was just like, I'm not quite sure. So I do find it hard to articulate, which is okay as well, and because there's so many people out there in the world doing things and they don't know how to describe it. They don't know how to put words to it. They just know that they're just being, being who they are. And that's fine. That's exactly where we want to get everybody. Imagine if everybody was doing that. Imagine if everyone knew they had choice. They could be who they are. What type of world would we be living in opposed to what the world is right now?
Trust me, I agree with you, like, wholeheartedly. And like, I hold this light, like, a part of my mission on earth is like amplification of truth and power, meaning your truth, your power. So, and also too, it trickles into the world, but in your space, there's a truth, your truth. But so many of us, just like you said in this beautiful story you gave us, the truth of the place you lived was women do X, and you went, okay, that's what we do. And you kept seeing the messages show up throughout the way, and it would prick a little bit and like almost like create a little hole in the energy field, right? And it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger until, and we talked about this on your podcast, until like it's like, oh my God, there's chaos and challenges and irritation, and all the things got harder because you weren't listening to the call that kept coming through, that life can be different. And this is where you're really meant to be, over here, serving and holding this capacity for whatever women coming into your world in whatever way you serve them. But most of us are ignoring the call, where you couldn't ignore it any longer because you had a meltdown, which is also like a byproduct of us not being in alignment. And you started now asking questions. So like after this transition happened for you and you realized there has to be something else, and you started, paying attention, life coaching and then life coaching over the last 3 years, even, you've had movement in your life. Like, I would love for you to just dive into that while I put my air conditioner back on, because I'm going to sweat my butt off. So continue, please.
Yes, no, good idea. So the last, so that started 4 or 5 years ago, and I got to a certain point where I was feeling comfortable again. And because I was like, done the work. It's awesome. Like, there we go. That's like wrapped up in a bow now. It's all complete.
Love
Little
it.
did I know what was coming. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then I'd always wanted to move from my hometown of Broken Hill, which is like a mining town out in Western New South Wales here in Australia. And it's a long way from nowhere. It was never going to be a space that I was going to be forever. And I knew that. So when I married Joel, I remember saying to him very early on, like, we won't be here forever. And so I planted the seed. I'm very good at planting the seed for things. I realize that sometimes other people, it takes time for things to grow. And so I'm definitely a woman that knows how to plant a seed and
Good
water
job. I love it. Like, here's my seed.
Just plant it here, we'll nurture that. And so once all this happened, COVID was actually really great for us, because my husband works in mining and he would never be able to work remotely prior to COVID. And so it was like the opportunity. You know how they say, the opportunity, luck is opportunity, being prepared for the opportunity.
Yes, I love this.
And that's basically what it was. It's like, so it was like we're holding, knowing that we want to leave Broken Hill, but didn't really know how, but believing that we would. I definitely held the belief. Maybe Joel's not so much. He's more of a skeptic and very logical, complete opposite to me. But I was like, we're going to have this life and we're going to be somewhere different. And, I've got my mum on the phone saying, why on earth would you leave, because you've got such good jobs here and it's so uncertain out there. And I'm like, Mum, it's okay. Like, it's all going to work out, because I do have this, full belief that everything works out for me. Absolutely. Because it always does.
It always does.
And so, please borrow that.
Take it and make it your own. Okay. Yeah, you can take it.
Exactly. And so, just kept holding that belief. And then when we did move, we moved to the Gold Coast, which is a beautiful spot that we both liked. And my father lives up here, so we thought sort of like a second home, because we've been here numerous times. It felt comfortable for my family to move here, and got up here, really dove into a lot of coaching programs and stuff up here, like outside of my, expertise. And then everything's like, oh, okay, there's more. There's lots more.
Welcome. Ding. You're going up the elevator. Oh, there's an elevator?
So all the shit that I hadn't uncovered yet, it was like coming to the surface and still is. And like at the moment, I'm in this whole, I'm having lots of visions of, like, no, it's memories. They're memories. I'm having lots of memories come to me. And I'm just like, and I'm actually trusting myself to say them out loud, because normally I would really always keep them internal. But I'm saying them out loud to Joel and anybody that will listen, basically, just about the memories that are coming up. And yeah. I'm not saying it, I'm doing it in a non-judgmental way. It's like there's no judgment about anyone that I'm talking about in these memories, but I'm just revealing them to myself. And so they just keep coming up, and it just keeps unraveling. It's like the onion, keeps unraveling all the layers of my unconscious and where it is actually showing up in my results in life. It's like, okay, so this is not happening exactly the way that you wanted. For example, like my business, you have this beautiful vision of where your business is going to go.
Yeah.
You're like, it's like this nice straight line. Yeah, well, that fucking didn't happen. It's not happening. No straight lines.
Not happening.
Not happening. So yeah, the ups and downs, the decisions and the indecision and procrastination and all that type of stuff is coming up, all from these memories that I'm now being revealed, like from my subconscious, that I haven't thought of forever. Like I would actually have said, and my sister would agree with me, because she would have always said about me, you never remember anything, Prue. And I was right. I was like, no, I was like fully living in the present moment, mostly.
Which
but
is amazing,
now,
but like when you have to go in to do the deep work to pull it from the root to find the pattern, you've got to go back. Yeah.
So there was a lot of I was living in the present moment, yes, but I wasn't processing the negative feelings that I was feeling in those moments.
Right.
I was just like brushing them aside, pretending they weren't there.
Yeah.
Gotta be kind, Prue, gotta be nice, gotta support other people, gotta be quiet. Like one that's come up for me recently is, so up until I was about 5, I didn't speak. I did not utter a word. It was only even 5.5. So I didn't utter a word. And even my mum actually says to me that I was a silent baby. I didn't really cry much. She would forget to feed me. And because I didn't cry for food. So I had this huge block here,
Oh, I'm sure.
And because if you knew me 5 years ago, there's no way that we could be having this conversation. Like I would not be using words. Like I just didn't.
Wow.
And so coming up with all these memories, and I did a bit of a clearing of some, it was actually past life trauma.
I was just going to say, were you strangled in a past life? Did they go there? Did they go into the life?
I didn't actually go that, but I had this just like past lives around just being very, like, it was very still in that feminine energy role, like being pushed down all the time. It's like, you just do as I say and all this sort of stuff, and not allowed to speak because it's dangerous. If you speak up, it's dangerous. And then even in this lifetime, like as a kid, my dad, loved my dad, like we have a really great relationship. Yet as kids, he would come home from work and my mum would be like, you've got to be quiet when dad comes home, don't make any noise, otherwise you'll get in trouble. And in trouble, like if we were loud, we weren't even that loud. Like I was so quiet. I didn't even say anything, for God's sake. Yeah.
For like 5 years, I didn't even talk.
Exactly. Said something like, Dad was reading the paper, and if we made a noise, we'd be in trouble. So it would be like, stand at the end of the hallway, and when we went to bed, he would kick us up the arse as we went to bed. Or if we asked in the car, traveling from Broken Hill to Adelaide's about a 6-hour trip, and we weren't allowed to have food or drink or anything, which is fine, but we weren't allowed to speak either. Like if I said how long to go, Dad would literally like turn around and like smack me across the back of the legs and say, you're not allowed to ask that question. So of course I was like mute.
Yeah, seriously.
Like, don't say anything, don't speak, because it's actually dangerous for you to speak.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so, it's interesting. Yeah, like I do a lot of past life work. I work in the Akashic Records, and I'm trained in that, and now teaching it starting in June, and literally a certification program. but past lives are showing up a lot right now in the next level we're holding within our field. So one of the pillars, I call it a pillar that we come to earth with, a couple key pillars we have in our life to move through. We are working right now in the collective through one of our major pillars. So it's
Okay.
interesting that you said that. And when I work with clients like one-to-one capacity and I drop them into, I call it ceremony, to go find the root, it's mostly past lives. So that's why I asked you. I'm like, because I can see you being strangled, and I could see how even that life that you mentioned could have been a byproduct from that first life of you actually speaking your truth, and then it radiated into that life that's connected still to this life. So it's
There
just,
you go.
that's why I asked that question. So interesting
Yeah.
though, right?
I know, I'm fascinated with all this, and it's just before doing this deep work, like this deep healing and emotional, and really getting into my unconscious. I wanted to believe, but I was a bit of a skeptic.
Yeah.
If someone said, "Do you believe?" I'm like, "Yeah, I believe." Like, I'm really open to it, but I think deep inside, I was like, "Yeah, but I've really had nothing to give me any proof of it." Like. And so when I did this last year and all this stuff was dropping in, I just came out going, "Oh my God, everything is connected." Like, I couldn't say that enough. I was like, everything's connected. Oh my God. Like, I was just walking around like, like crazy.
Everything is connected.
Everything.
Everything.
Yes. And so I was like, wow. Like, I had to share this one experience that I experienced in a past life. And it was through my paternal, my mother's paternal side, down that side.
Yeah.
And I went right back, and there was this, it was for the feeling of guilt, because I carried a lot of guilt, and I was like, I don't know why I'm feeling so guilty all the time. It's like, just do what you want. Like, you don't have to, especially in motherhood, had to conform to this, like this is the perfect mother. And I was a mother that I didn't want to play with the kids really. Like, I loved like supporting them emotionally and having all their things done for them, and but I didn't want to get down on the ground and play with them, and I just felt so much guilt around that. And then I understand why, because once I went and did this, cleared the guilt from my past life, the woman, the vision was me standing on this edge of this body of water. It's like a dam or something. And I knew that I had lots of children. Like, there was lots of children. Like, I would say 10 children or something. And one of the children was in front of me in the dam and had drowned in the dam. And the guilt came from not being sad about the child drowning or letting the child drown. I felt relief because that child had drowned.
Yeah. Wow.
It's like, yeah. And I was like, in that moment, was like fully in that moment when I was experiencing it. And it's like, thank God, one less child. That was what I was thinking. And then guilt came from that. It's like, holy shit, I shouldn't be thinking that way. Everyone should be sad when they lose a child. And of course, like, you think that's what should happen. But this person in my past life was like, I just fucking feel relieved that I've just got one less child to look after.
It's like, and it's crazy when we think about this, but it's so perfectly in alignment that, and a lot of past lives are coming up right now to be healed in the energy, because we can't move forward in our purity of light, because technically all past lives are happening in the same moment of time as this life. So we're multidimensional beings. And I've talked to this before in one of my podcasts where I talked about past lives. And so it's not like it's separated, and it's not like it's in the past. It's all in the energy right now. And we are being called to illuminate and light up more, because the vibration of truth and like authentic truth is being desired now to move through the energy of the world. But we can't do it if we don't drop into the shadow work and do the shadow work at the same time and move it through. And whether we call it shadow work or not, yours is like the word is unconscious work and going into the root of the unconscious, but it all pertains. So it's so, and I've been saying this for a while, and I love watching confirmations move through my field all the time, because it just keeps reminding me of the potency I work within, that I just got to keep moving. Right. And my job is to keep moving. And you see this often in your work too, like confirmation after confirmation after confirmation. It's like, okay, keep going. Like, don't stop and think
Yeah,
about it
that's
and chill out on your beach now and put the like take the gas pedal off, right? It's like go, keep going. So I love this.
And I love that you said that about keep going, because that, I think towards the end of last year, I pulled off like I pulled my foot off the gas because I was like, holy moly, like this is getting a lot. Like,
Yeah.
and so I actually pulled back. And in the start of this year, I was really doubting a lot of stuff.
Mm.
And like I went out and got a job, for God's sake.
Wow,
I got a
really?
job, I didn't accept it. I got this job.
So
And I was like,
interesting how we revert back to patterns that like
oh
save
yeah,
us
it's like
in
this is safe.
comfort. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, thank
yeah,
you for saying this. Oh my God, this is
yeah.
amazing.
I went out and got a job and went to the job trial and was sitting in that room, and I can't explain how every part of my being was like, no, 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 this is not, And like the walls were like, they were glass walls too, because it was a glass office. They were like closing in. I was like, how can fucking glass walls close in? Yeah. So yes, but I walked out of there, and I remember the guy was saying, like, lovely guy, like, great job. And he was like, cool, can you start on Monday? And we'll do. And I couldn't bring myself to say no, sorry, in the moment.
Yeah.
I had to walk out of there and talk to him later.
Yeah. And then you
But
got the courage after to actually speak your truth and step in. Yeah. Wow.
yeah, so but that's to me is like the full intuition, like that's a full body no.
Yes.
Just like, oh, shouldn't I? It's like full body no, like it's that pulse that you were talking about now. My podcast, the pulse of like,
Yeah.
no, that this
Okay,
is
I want to
not what
lean
you
into this a bit because I feel like there's a lot of people out there that are at this exact position of time.
okay.
So what transitioned for you? So you shut down, you couldn't handle it. I would love for you to dive into what you couldn't handle anymore, you just didn't want to be a part of. And then what made you think the job was the answer?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, there's potency in this for sure.
So the end of last year, I completed a training that I had paid for basically, earlier on in my life, like 12 months before. And it wasn't aligned. It wasn't aligned to me to do this training. And I knew it because I was having I don't want to do this training. I don't want to do it, and it's nothing against the trainer. Like the trainer is fabulous,
Yep. Yep.
but it wasn't right for me. And I went against my intuition, and I took that hard road, the narrow road where I needed my machete,
Welcome to my life. I know.
Yeah. So I went that road because the first part of it was great. I really enjoyed the first part. I didn't need the second part, and all of me knew that. And I went against it, and I was like, I'm gonna do it. And then I kept putting it off. It was supposed to happen earlier in the year. I kept putting it off. Used all the excuses in the book to put it off.
Yeah.
And then time came around. I was like, I'm just gonna lean in. I'm just gonna do it. I'm gonna enjoy it. I'm gonna get what I need out of it. And I did. I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And but then I said yes to something else that it wasn't aligned to me. I was like, what the it was just interesting watching, and it's great to look back on it because it's like, okay, now I know what like this doing things out of alignment looks like. This is what it feels like.
Yeah.
And I've always been a great decision maker and make great decisions. Like that's my belief about myself. But for this, it definitely wasn't the right decision because I was going against my gut feeling about it.
Yeah.
And so I said yes to it. And from the moment I said yes, I went into my brain.
Okay. Yeah.
And I really beat myself up for, it was spending money, the whole conversation around money, which is great because you've already brought this up about spending money out of alignment and in alignment if it's serving you, and so really stepped into that, and it took me right back to my earlier days where I was in such scarcity and really pulled that up. So I was like, here you go, Prue, have this, like,
welcome. I know, like I always say that all the time. It's like, welcome. Here it is. Yeah. You asked for it. Like, we got to work on this now. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So I had to really go through that, which then brought up a lot of, and it surfaced as doubt about my industry, which is interesting. That's how it manifested for me. It was like doubt about the industry. You know how I said life coaching is cringy and stuff.
Yeah.
That came up, and I was like, what the, like, I was like
did.
feeling really like, oh, like get it off me. Like, I don't want it to be
Yeah.
associated to me.
Yeah.
And so then because of that, I was repelling everything, as you could imagine. Like nothing was coming this way. Everything was like going out this way. And I was like this shut down into like fully into this negative energy.
Yeah.
And that's when I was like in this money scarcity. And honestly, that it's not even real. Like if we were to look at my life, I don't have money scarcity.
Yeah.
So
I know, but you dropped into that believing it. Yes. Yes.
And, you know, so then, stepped into that full money scarcity and then was like, okay, the only way to solve this is to get a secure job.
Wow.
So I fully went into that. I applied for so many jobs, got a couple of interviews, got one job, and then that's when I was like, oh, wait there. No, I don't want this. And since then, it's so funny. I keep getting these people reaching out to me now saying, oh, I've got the perfect job for you. I'm like, delete.
So did it solidify? Like you went through that experience and did it actually like what happened when you said no? Like what, because there's a key right there. Like, and I'd love to lean into that key.
Yeah, the saying no. And again, I have a great support system, you know, like I have a husband that, you know, provides, you know, cash flow for our family. So I have this support system. I know not everybody has this.
Yeah.
And so for me, saying no and speaking out to Joel saying, look, I don't want to take this job. And he had the exact same feeling. He was like, no, do not take it. I don't want you to take it. Like I've never actually heard him say that with such conviction about anything. But we had this real mutual feeling. And so then it was like, I could take a breath and be like, oh, that's right. Like I can actually, I started to remember it. It allowed me, because I surrendered into it. I was like, the surrender into the whole, me and my business are one. This is my soul's purpose. It gave me, because I've always had like a real fuel about it, but I just lost it. And I lost it amongst all that old bullshit stories that I told myself in my past. And so once I was surrendered into that I could then see the sentences again that were telling me like, that's right, it's literally a sentence, like literally a sentence that's making me feel a certain way, that's keeping me attached to my, you know, not the self that's not aligned with this soul's purpose. And so it just allowed me to step into that. And then from then, lots of things happened. Like I actually got, when I did the process of calling in my spirit guides, I went to that program, and from there I won actually her 2-day retreat.
Of course,
never won anything.
Yeah.
And so I went to the next retreat, which is just keeps opening me up to all this new stuff. And so the abundance is flowing.
So fun.
And so the key was the surrender. Absolutely.
And I like love and breathe into surrendering. And I feel, and I've told the story so many times, but I feel like it was the hardest part for me, but it was the most dynamic shift when I finally did and owned it. And I still like am triggered sometimes and like going, have you fully surrendered into this? You know, like, and have to consciously consider that and think about it. But I thank you for sharing that story, because I feel there's a lot of people that are right now at that cusp that they've just got to grit in a bit and step over instead of fall back into the safety of what they think. And just like what you said, the safety isn't going to get them the soul's fulfillment in their passion and pathway. It is a band-aid, and the band-aid's getting ripped off somewhere along the line, my friend, because you've chosen as a soul to step into this mission. So not someone else chose it for you. Before you got into this body, you said, I am all in for this, and that's my piece to the puzzle. So if we put a band-aid on it, it's coming back and it's rearing its head no matter what, because that is the mechanism we've committed to. So I love that you had awareness in real time to like it took you 2 months instead of 2 years that you could have, you know?
Exactly. Yes, exactly. And that's what I love to say with the women that I work with. what once you used to be in a cycle of like, weeks, months, years,
Yeah.
sometimes, of the
Yeah,
same cycle,
for
like
sure.
doing all the shit and feeling terrible can take you moments.
Yeah.
Like I worked with lots of women on weight loss when I first started it, because I just looked out into the world around me, like my immediate world, and was like, how can I support women right now? And that was something that just came into me. I was like, great, I'm just going to go all in on that. And I did. And that was, for me, it was like, okay, great. Like the healing of that was, what I used to call it being off the wagon, the
Yeah.
bandwagon of health. It would like just cruise off. Sometimes I'd be off that healthy wagon for years.
Yeah.
But now it can be moments. It's like, oh, great. I ate the cheeseburger.
Yeah.
And then the next meal is back to what you know is aligned for you, rather than, oh, well, I've eaten the cheeseburger, I may as well now have the fries and another cheeseburger for dinner, and
Milkshake.
going that way. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's like, oh, that's right. You become aligned a lot more quickly when you do this work.
Oh, and I call it collapsing time too. Like we're really in an energy capacity to be able to collapse timelines. So what took us X amount of time before can take us shorter periods of time. And I test this theory out all the time. So now I'm like, I do it with revenue a lot because that's a motivator for me. And I'm like, how can I make what I made last month now in 2 weeks? And it's not like I'm driving towards the money. I'm driving towards the energy and the impact, right? Because I know that if I can collapse time and do that in half the time, I'm serving more people or in a different potency or something's changing, right? So does it always work for me? No, because I'm still a human working through my own stuff within that, but I'm getting way better at it, and I'm like,
Absolutely.
and in the
Yeah.
concept of that, right? So like I had a client pop back into my field after 5 years. And I said to him, look, and I used to call him my Groundhog Day client, and he will own that. Like literally, some days I'd be like, dude, this is fucking Groundhog Day. I'm not playing this game with you anymore. It's the same conversations every single week. So he dropped back into my field earlier this year, and I said, look, like I don't do life the way I used to do life. Okay. Like you need to understand, maybe I'll work 4 hours a day, 4 days a week, maybe. And I make way more money now than I ever did working 7 days a week, 18-hour days. I'm not taking on projects. I'm not stepping in with people that aren't ready to make moves. Like I'm like, my energy is potent and I can shift you in real time. Like I know this about myself and I own this, but you need to be ready. Like I'm not like, you can't come in as 5 year old, like 5 years ago client. Like you've got to be ready to take the action. So he had one call and couldn't handle it after that. And I just said, okay, at least we can honor this because he fell off the wagon. I was like, dude, I thought we were doing monthly calls. Where are you? What do you mean? I'm okay. Never mind. You keep floating over there. Like so
Yeah.
it's interesting to see how it's all playing out in the field. And our awareness is so key in this whole entire thing too.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Without the awareness piece, you
Yeah.
need more than the awareness, but the awareness is like the first step into
Yeah.
it. Yeah. I
So
know. I think that's what being unshakable for me is like. It's the awareness piece. I feel the women that come into that program, it's like dipping the toe in. And it's like, we don't really know much about it. What is this all about? And, I've had people come and go really quickly
of
because they're
course.
like, oh, I haven't got time. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. It's like 1 hour a week. Interesting.
How you don't have time for yourself to move. They're just not ready. And we obviously as coaches honor it. And we're in that mechanism now of like, we know what we hold and what moves through. And those that are inclined to work with us will come into our field and lean in with us.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of women that are like, I'll do Unshakable, but I want to work with you one-on-one. And I'm open to that. I'm more than happy to work with women one-on-one if that's what they're asking for.
Of
If you
course.
ask for it, you will get it always. Yeah.
Yeah. And
That's a lesson for me too. A lesson that I've been learning over these last, few months is asking for what you want. I have no idea how to ask for anything. Like I'll just do everything by myself. It's like, I can do it. I'm over here doing everything by myself.
yeah. Welcome to my by myself world.
It's like freaking lonely over here.
Yeah, the game changes when you get other people moving in through your fields and everything, and I said to my podcast producer who does all the editing on my podcast, I said to her, okay, get ready. Once I hit like X amount in the month, you're taking over everything except for obviously the interview stuff, because I desire to lean into her that way. I desire to hold the energy potency here, but then because she wants to do this, give her that space. And I don't know if at the end of this podcast you will hear her, but I would listen to the end of the podcast because she is looking to take on new like editor podcasting clients. So she might be at the end of the podcast this time around. And if she's listening to this, I hope that she hears me say this out loud. So she puts her audio track at the end for people to connect with her if they're looking for that kind of work. But like, it's true. Like when we step into this space to be able to lean in and lean into our gifts and help and allow other people to serve us and receive, like, it's not just about giving. There's that whole receiver energy that there's a polarity. Both need to be present. So so cool. So cool.
Yeah, it is. And I suppose, I'm just having this like moment, and it's every bit of me wants to say yes. The part for me that was healed was the receiving bit.
Yeah.
Which is when, like, going back to how I said I've learned to slow down. And I actually said this to my husband yesterday when we were out for lunch. It was Mother's Day. Yep. And I said to him how I carried so much guilt for a long time that I didn't earn as much as Joel and contribute financially to our family. But now I'm allowing to just be in this space. So that's the receiving. So that's actually what the difference was. Like me saying no to the job, it was me stepping into receiving support and to be nurtured from him.
Even, yeah.
I'm having like an aha moment here right now.
I love it. There you go. Yeah. But we always have breakthroughs all the time, right? It's just about us paying attention to see if it's dropping in. Well, and it's so funny. I know that you and I could talk forever, but I want to hold the pace here. But like the receiving energy comes from the female woman lineage, so mother line. So even if you were to like look at that, which would make a little bit of sense, you know, in what you've already just spoken about in this podcast already, about that line of energy with wealth, the challenge you had to receive it because most of the growing up and the environment you were in was keeping you in a box here, to just be in that box. So it's just so interesting how it all comes together, you know?
Yeah.
So cool.
What a good conversation. It is.
Yeah. So Prue, where can, like, we know you have your Unshakeable group program. You also do one-to-one work. Where can people find you? Is there anything going on in your field now? We know you have a podcast that you just recently launched. So tell us, like, obviously in the show notes, we're going to have links to stuff, but like, tell us about you in the space of, this is the time where you can shamelessly plug yourself in the purity of your light.
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, I'm on a podcast. I think that's the best use of my energy right now is actually doing my podcast. I'm only 3 episodes in, which is fantastic. So it's brand new. So that can be found on all the major podcast apps.
Yep. What's it called?
Spotify and Apple Podcasts. It's called More Life, Less Drama with Prue Sulicich. And yeah, it's a big photo of me on there, so you won't be able to miss me. And so that's happening. And I also, my Be Unshakable program it's like a continuous program. You can join, leave at any time you like. So there's no cutoff dates. I don't like the whole scarcity of like, got to get in now. So I love to just keep that open, and people come and go all the time. We meet in Australia on a Monday night, which is really nice. And the month of May has been really great because we've been doing like Mindful May, which it's been like surrender and expansion and reinvention, or surrender, healing, expansion, reinvention, week by week over May. And everything's recorded, so you don't have to be there in real time, which is wonderful. You can get as much value from these programs that I offer just by listening to the replay, which is great. So that's happening. And yeah, pretty much that's it. And on my socials, like I share on my socials as well. So keep everybody up to date.
Yeah, and we'll make sure obviously all the links are in the show notes for everybody. Before we pop off, let me ask you a question. Which question are we going to ask you today? I'm being told that this is like, so you know me and my channeling. I'm being told that the collective really wants to hear like what a light warrior means to you, and what does that feel like in your field when you were to think about light warriors? And I think that that's cool. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. A light warrior, a term that I have not heard a lot of until recently, which is interesting. So the light warrior for me is the inner light that you hold yourself and that you are guided towards, which is a guiding light for you. That's what I'm hearing from myself. And yeah, everything comes back to you. And I've got this beautiful visual too of this real, like, it's like the polarity of the feminine and the masculine image with that beautiful staff with the light. That's what I'm seeing right now.
So cool.
And and it's just like glowing and like beaming. And yeah, so it's the inner light that is coming out through you, through your hand and like into that energy on the staff, which is beautiful. So yeah, being guided by your inner wisdom.
I love this because I just finished over the last couple of weeks the illicit program that I taught, which was the Light Warrior program. It was an 8-week program, and one of the weeks was the embodiment of both the masculine and feminine energy, because it is a wholeness within us, and we all have both. Our chakras have both. Everything has both, right? And how do we move within that polarity? How do we use both energies in our world? So I'm not surprised that that was the download that you got in one of the mechanisms in that space, because it is a beautiful blending of the energies. It's one of the keys to light warriorship, which is so cool. I love this.
Yeah, beautiful.
Thank you. Cool. All right, last question to finish off. What do you want to say to everybody? Like, what's on your heart to just speak into the world at this very moment of time?
Yeah, I think always for me, it's that the ability to choose our lives. If ever you think you do not have or feel you don't have choice, remind yourself that you do. It might not look exactly how you think it should look, but you always have that choice. Like, remember that the guiding light, that's you. Your vision for your life is meant for you. If you're having that vision, like you said, it is meant for you. And I totally believe that. And so knowing that you have the choice always, like not just sometimes, always, eternally. So that's what I want to say to everybody.
Yeah, and I love this, and I love ending on this. And I just want to say thank you, Prue, for coming on, sharing your light in the world, telling like vulnerable stories about your process and what you've been through. And I know people heard it. So I just encourage everybody to go to your socials, give you love and support there. If you're inclined to want to work with her, fill out the index or fill out the application or click yes on the button, whatever that looks like for you. But Prue, thank you so much for shining your light into the world today with us, and just so grateful to know you.
Thank you. Yes, you too. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're so welcome. And we'll see you guys all on the next episode.